what has college football in this new era, and we'll get to the draft in a minute,
Yeah.
but like we just had like the longest season ever. And I feel like in one of our conversations at like Elite 11 back in the day, you were like, I love seeing good on good.
100%.
Like you got to see great on great, right? Like I think when you break down tape, like you're watching, every App State game. Shout out Joey Aguilar. But you're also loving watching Texas versus Ohio State. What did the playoff do for you as a draft analyst?
So I've got a hot take on this. I'm not a hot take guy, but I like saying that. So
Love it.
Because you asked me a great question about the playoff, and the two topics of conversation in college football have been the playoff and the portal, right? That's been the two. To me, as on the scouting side of it, the most impactful change in college football over the last 20 years has been conference realignment. It's even bigger to me because, and this, especially having been in the Pac-12 and having, been at SC, if USC had an offensive tackle prospect, which they would have a lot of, it was a hard evaluation because I might only see him play against 2 or 3 NFL caliber edge rushers in the conference or in their non-conference that year. When they pushed all these teams specifically into the Big Ten and into the SEC, like you are seeing these guys at the line of scrimmage face NFL caliber players 5, 6, sometimes if you go deep into the playoff, 8, 9 times. Like you've never seen more good on good. So as great as the playoff is, that really is only for those 12 teams. But for those conferences, those 2 in particular, those are like NFL light. Like that is the minor leagues of the National Football League right now.
Yeah, Jed Fish has called it NFL light, and even calling those games, it feels that way every weekend. It's always a big deal, which to me, first year in the Big Ten, it was really fun to check out Nebraska and Indiana when they were rolling. So let's go to Colorado.
But real quick though, Yokes, do you think, am I right there? Because I feel like that doesn't get this. I feel like that's like the lost third leg of the changes in college football.
I think on a couple levels. I think it goes by position. Like if you ask me, biggest takeaways calling games in the Big Ten for the first time in 20 years, the only time in my entire career, I'd say 2 things stood out. One is I think we had 7 or 8 games, DJ, where Rhett and Guy Haberman and I, each team had 1 possession in the first quarter.
That's crazy.
And you're just like used to the Pac-12, and you're like,
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, what is happening? But you're in it. Like it doesn't matter when you're calling it because you're so immersed in the snap and the minutia.
Yeah.
And then 2 was quarterback play. Like I thought the backup quarterbacks at SC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington would have started at a handful of schools in the Big Ten. So I think from that evaluation standpoint, like it might be a little harder. Like I do like the wide out thing. Like there's Ohio State, of course, like the elite teams, like that's not negotiable. But the other part of it, I'd be curious because I look at like the inverse and say, okay, what about the Big 12 in Colorado, right? Like here's Shedeur and Travis, who obviously are going to be drafted night 1. Where is TBD? Like, does it impact that for you, or do you're like, hey, Travis Hunter's elite, I don't care what league he's playing in.
Yeah.
Like, how do you look at those 2 guys specifically going from the Pac-12 to the Big 12?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say Travis is easier for me, just because that's just you can just watch movement. I don't care if he was playing at Jackson State where he was previously. You can just watch him move around and go, that's different, like how he moves. I do prefer him as an offensive player over a defensive player, but neither here nor there. With Shedeur, as with any quarterback in the Big 12, it is challenging because the defenses aren't what they've been. The conference as a whole is a tricky one in the Big 12. We had Kenny Dillingham on our coverage of the Big 12 Combine, and I said, Coach, you realize you won the conference with 1 Combine player? Cam Scatterby was the only Combine invite player they had. So on one side of it, I give Coach Prime and Dion and Shedeur and Travis, these guys, tremendous amount of credit for the success that they brought to Colorado. It was dead. Clyde will even just talk about how dormant and how dead that place was. They revitalized it. They won, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. But they also, it wasn't like they had kind of the existing Colorado team and dropped a couple guys in there. It was a wholesale swap. Like there's nothing that resembled that. They just took out one entire team and they installed a whole new team. So again, it's like recalibrating as an analyst and as someone who's done this. It's not like you can change the entire organization. The whole roster's gone. So it's just different in terms of what it would have been in the past, where you're like, man, Russell Wilson transfers to Wisconsin and he was the difference maker. Like he was that one little ingredient that kind of made the whole thing work. I don't know that we ever see that type of thing again.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I wonder, like, the premium teams, how they navigate that. Like, Bo Nix, Dillon, Gabriel, they were that. But to your point of, like, a rebuild, I've always said this. I believe this in college football now. It is so much harder to take over a really talented team than take over a team that's, down and out, like Colorado. I say that because, like, you got to hold the team together now.
Yeah, you got to play defense and offense.
Yeah, like, I look at Arizona and Brent Brennan having to navigate, right? I know you're watching Tetairoa McMillan. To me, he's just an elite player, ball skills through the roof. But having to navigate that as a coach versus Kenny came in and he did what Deion did. He just didn't get the pub because he wasn't Deion. Just flipping the roster. So let's just flip it to T-Mac. When you watch him, I'm curious if he reminds you of somebody specific, and I'm going to give you my comp to him after I hear from you.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a couple, just like there's the Drake London one because of, the body control is what's similar there. And just to be able to contort and adjust and make plays. There's some similarities there. I also have one that's kind of an old school one, but Chris Henry was in the AFC North when I was there. Rest his soul, he's passed away, but his son, I believe, is a big time recruit now. But when he came to that Cincinnati team, I remember they had TJ Hushmanzada, they had Chad Johnson, and all of a sudden Chris Henry gets dropped in there, and he's making all these incredible acrobatic catches with a big basketball type frame. So I saw some similarities to him when I watched him as well. Now, I don't think he's a perfect player. Like I'd like to see him with a little more urgency and a little more physicality. I think it's all in his body. But there's some times that I like on backside of things, like I just want to see him. I just want a little bit more juice, a little bit more energy, a little bit more urgency there. But in terms of the ball skills and the athleticism, all that stuff's outstanding.
Yeah, I can remember meeting him as a freshman and watching him, and I think you and I agree on this. Like, love getting to games early.
Oh yeah,
to watch, right? Like how guys walk out, how they warm up, what's their body language like? Are they connected to their teammates? Like, what's just their routine? And watching his routine before it went viral, it was like, oh, this is unique. And watching him move as a freshman to sophomore to junior reminded me a little bit of when Larry Fitzgerald came in to Pitt.
Oh, interesting.
As my roommate in college, of like, he could catch everything, but like his body hadn't caught up to it. And then by the time he got to his second year, you're like, whoa, like more explosive, like can move a little different. T-Mac is so natural because he's a volleyball player. And I'm trying to think, like, what volleyball comps do I have? Like, most guys aren't playing
UCLA, Danny Farmer, was it?
There you go.
Yeah.
He was just, to me, like, it's just so explosive. And that's where I wonder for you in the, your NFL experience, like, I still believe that coaching matters. And I get that, like, there's a world in the NFL where it's like, well, we're kind of just managing. I find that hard to believe to be accurate when you have a player who's really talented and can you get a little bit more out of him? I'm curious, your thoughts on that, having been in the league for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think it used to be easier in terms of how you did that, but the smart organizations have figured it out. The smarter organizations have dedicated, whether it's like if you're an offensive line coach, there's, in terms of the number of coaches you can load up in the NFL, man. So I can have my offensive line coach, I can have my two assistants. And to me, it's like, we're going to maximize everything. If our starters are going here, then our assistant O-line coaches a little bit before, a little bit after practice, as much as we can, we're getting our hands on these young guys. And those are the guys who are teaching them and developing them to get them kind of up to speed. Now, it's probably, it's a big ask for your regular position coach to be able to do that and get guys ready to win and compete, each and every week, and also be developing players. But that's why I think the wholeness of the staff is so important, man, is having teachers in there. And I think that's still incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pivot to QB, because here's my theory on quarterback play.
Yeah.
I think in high school, it is the best it's ever been from a developmental standpoint. Like, it is off the hook. Now, granted, I just came from the Nike Coach of the Year Summit, where it's top 40 high schools. It was awesome. It was in Colorado, so we got to go visit Prime and watch practice and all those things. But what I learned is that, like, you could transfer every year in high school too.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind to learn that. Not that every guy is doing that, but I think the development is insane there. In college, I think it's actually taken a little bit of a hit because guys want to play so fast, or they're going to dip to somewhere else. Or you're going to find somebody to come in and just operate it as a veteran who's done a ton. And then you get to the NFL. And it's like, if you're drafted early, man, like, yes, you're going to develop and learn in the craft, but like you got to go play. So when you look at this year's crop, and I think Cam Ward, Shedeur's got his pro day. I know you'll be in studio later this week at NFL Network. NFL Network will be covering it, which will be really fun in Boulder. And then we have guys like Dillon, Gabriel, Jackson Dart. Like, how do you see this year's crop in your evaluations on those guys?
Yeah, to me, I think there's a gap with Cam at the top. I think he's the one who offers the most. And we always, we've used the phrase kind of chasing ceiling a little bit. And I think people can look at that and go, well, that's got people in trouble. You can look at this player or that player that's missed because you were chasing the upside and the ceiling. And my whole point has been, especially when you look around the landscape of the AFC, and I just call them cyborgs. When you look at all the cyborg quarterbacks, you got to try and navigate around. Like, I would rather miss on greatness than hit on average, because guess what? 3 years from now, we're both doing the same thing. We're trying to find another guy. So like that to me is, you've got to kind of chase some of that if you're going to be able to compete with those teams. So Cam Ward offers that, I think, with just the talent that he possesses to be able to make every single throw, drive it, layer it, get it up over the top. He's got incredibly quick hands, which I've become have been an important part of my evaluation process. Everybody has their different things that they try and focus on, but the way the game is incorporating RPOs and doing different things there, I think just the hand quickness has become really important. We talk about like middle infielder hands, and his hands are explosive and quick. So he can you get a free rusher. He can beat you with his release. He can beat you with his legs to be able to just sidestep you. He's really strong in his base, which I love. He can kind of pull through guys. He doesn't need a lot of space around him to operate, and he can still generate as much velocity as required. So, yeah, I think to me he's the most talented guy, and there's a little bit of a gap there.
When you look at, I know we talked about Shedeur and what he did at Colorado, because he was, I think one of your reports I read was like the hellacious hits that he took.
Oh my gosh.
Which I think his toughness can't be questioned. I just think it's such a unique evaluation. I was talking to a couple guys in the NFL about it, of like, on one hand, it could be automatic turnoff because you're like, oh, dude, like there's a lot that comes with this. And the other, it's like, well, his dad's an icon in sports, society, culture. I mean, you worked with him, you know what he's like. Like, it's a different evaluation. And when you put the uniform on, like, he's a tough dude. He makes a bunch of throws. He can anticipate. Like, how do you net out? And how do you think, maybe more importantly, like how NFL teams will net out their evaluation if some have an old school background? Have they caught up to the times? Like, how are they navigating Shedeur Sanders entering their locker room?
Well, I think that it's unique. I mean, we've never had anything like that. And it's different than just your dad's a Hall of Famer or a legendary player. I mean, we just saw Marvin Harrison Jr. come into the NFL, and it was not really even discussed or talked about. The difference is Dillon, and not only is a personality, but he has a platform. He's a college head coach who's going to have a microphone in front of him 3 days a week, if not more. So if things aren't going a particular way, well, is he going to weigh in? Is he going to, is this going to become part of this whole package? Nobody knows any of that. And I don't, I think Dion's got enough to keep him busy at Colorado that's not going to be, something he's going to be focusing his attention and time on. But we've never seen it. We've never seen this situation. So I just know you got to evaluate the kid for the kid. And he is unquestionably tough. He's been a winner. He's been a part of turning that thing around there, even if it's a whole new team, as we were talking about earlier. You give him a ton of credit for that. Accuracy, protecting the football, those are all fantastic qualities. Now, he does not have a huge arm. He's not, there's not a lot of twitch or suddenness to him, when you watch him move. Like, you don't see that kind of just that same pop and urgency that you'll see with some of the other guys. But you go to a team that can protect him, which he hasn't been afforded that luxury. But when, you go to a team that can give him a clean pocket, and you've got some guys who can do things with the ball in their hands, I think he can be a very efficient point guard. I talk about quarterbacks a lot, Yogs, about like the different families and the trees. We always talk about coaching trees. I don't think we've ever talked about quarterback like trees and families. Like, to me, he goes into like Joe Montana is the godfather of the timing touch throwers. Joe Burrow is the greatest example that we have now playing the game, that play that style of game. Brock Purdy's in that family and how he plays the game. Shedeur Sanders falls in line with that. Then you have the Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams. Cam Ward kind of falls more into that, kind of a little bit more freewheeling, loose, but just dynamic, explosive tools. Like, I kind of like looking at quarterbacks and kind of like, okay, I don't know if he's going to get to the top of that tree. That's some great guys, but that's the style of play that he's gonna bring.
Okay, so one more quarterback one, because to me, just being around Dillon Gabriel, like, he has I've said this on this show and other shows in the past, he has the greatest it factor I've seen at QB, and defined as you walk into a room, people feel your presence, and you make them better. I think he's worked on his mechanics. I think he's not tier one, but in the families, to me, there's like a version of like, is it the third, fourth rounder family that ends up like winning over a locker room and just being a dude? Like, for some reason, I just keep leaning into this young man, and I've got to know him really well over the course of our time covering his career. I'm curious what family he might fall into as you've watched him and gotten to know him.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I believe you have to correct me on this. Was he at the elite? I went to an Elite 11 throwing session. You were there, but was he there? No, this was a long time ago. So when Gabriel was there, but he was like, I think, a freshman. But it was, I think Tua was there, and Hurts was he?
He wasn't there that year, but Tua and Hurts were both there.
I was trying to. Who was the other quarterback? Who was the other Hawaiian quarterback then? There was another Hawaiian quarterback. It was a young quarterback who was there that everybody loved.
It was his good buddy who played at UCF, Mackenzie Milton.
Thank you. That's who it was. Yeah. That's who it was. I knew there was a UCF. I couldn't remember. I'm like, he's got to be. He's too young for that. But I do remember. Everybody loved that kid there, Mackenzie Milton. I just remember that always stood out in the back of my mind because all these big name guys, and everybody's like, everybody loves this other kid over here. Yeah. But no, I can. Everybody that I talked to that met with him at the Senior Bowl, team wise, said he was the most impressive. Like, just he has a presence about him. He has a full understanding of football and can explain it very, very clearly. Obviously stature wise, he's not, he's not a big guy, but if you're looking at the family that he falls into, I mean, he's on the Tua tree, wherever Tua is, like, you're going to say like, that's the similar style, not just because they're left-handed, but kind of how they play the game a little bit, which is they're going to beat you with quickness, and that's quick mentally, that's quick release. I'd be curious as someone who's stood next to both of them and watched them throw. Did Dillon have a stronger arm than Tua?
I think he does now. Yeah. I think he's a little bit more horsepower.
Yeah, because I would have said the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, how about, speaking of horsepower, last player here for you, Ashton Jeanty. Had a chance to, stand next to him at the Heisman, and then we all watched his pro day and see his physicality, watch the tape. I love that among all the quarterbacks we talked about, they've all were on their second or third school. Yeah. He could have dipped and gone anywhere, decided to come back. Like, does that play a factor at all, or is it purely just watch how he plays and how dynamic he can be? I think he's your first back.
Right? Yeah, he's my third overall player in the whole draft, dude. So, I mean, he's outstanding. I mean, that's taken into account like Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, pretty special in their own right, but he's as good at his position as anybody is at their position in the entire draft. And I do think there's something to the guy that's stayed there. I think it tells you, I don't think it tells you about the player. I think it tells you about the person, and it tells you, what kind of guy you're getting and how he's going to be able to be immediately respected by his teammates when he gets in there because of how he works and how he is a we, not me guy. He wanted to go in there, and it didn't necessarily always benefit him. I obviously went to the Heisman Trophy, but that wasn't a decision to benefit him to stay at Boise. That was to benefit all his guys and to benefit their team and try and win as many games as they could with his team. So I think I give him credit for that as a person 100%, but his tape stands alone. I don't need to throw him up with the high character in order to vault him up the board. I just do that by watching the tape. He has got unbelievable balance, and he gives you no surface to hit. Like, there's a lot of MJD to him, when MJD was running and just like, I can't get to him. Like, he's just he's underneath everybody. They can't get to his surface, and he just bounces off everything. The Oregon game, which did you guys call that game?
No, we had him the week before.
Washington State. Did you do that game?
No.
Which game did you guys do? I knew you guys did a game where you went off.
We didn't have. I never had Boise all
year.
You
didn't do Boise?
No.
Oh, I thought you did. Oh, maybe Siciliano. Siciliano might have called that game.
He did the week 2 game.
Okay, I knew I talked to somebody who did that game. I know that was you, but dude, the Washington State and Oregon games, I was like, what else? I put the tape down, man. Like, we're good. We can't tackle a guy. A Penn State game, he ran so hard. Now he's got some fumbles, but MJD had fumbles too. which I always give MJD a hard time about when I see him around the network, because I was, hey, MJD, small hands, big biceps, man. You're going to have some fumbles when you have that combination.
Yeah, he's in that family. Small hands, big biceps.
Yeah.
We're all open to that.